So the two best players in the WNBA, at least to me, are all-star captains. That being Caitlin Clark and Napheesa Collier. Of course, Clark, Indiana Fever superstar. Collier, star of the Lynx, who is having an MVP season. Clark has had a little bit of an up and down season for her, relatively speaking, because she's been in and out of the lineup. Collier did miss a few games with a back issue as well. And of course, Clark had the shooting slump before she went out with the latest injury. Don't know how much that was related or is related, but Clark's impact on the floor is apparent when you see her there and when you see her off, and her numbers are still awesome. Not to mention, she's by far the most popular player in the league, and this is decided by fan voting, and it makes you feel good about what the exhibition can be in Indianapolis, because I think the newfound eyes on the league have seen how good a player like Collier is, and of course, Caitlin Clark was going to be the headliner with the All-Star game taking place in Indianapolis. So that's the way that the results went down. You can look at the some of the presentation and the celebration and all that sort of stuff. Of course, all-star captains as shown by the WNBA there. What this means, by the way, is that they will be picking teams amongst the all-star pool. How were they selected captains? Well, they were selected captains by being amongst the starters receiving the most fan votes. And the way this all broke down is that it's 50% fan votes, 25% media votes, 25% player votes. So that's how it all came to be. That's how the breakdown of the way that the voting process goes and how the players were chosen. So there you have that. And of course, Collier got a ton of votes, which is great to see. I mean, like the increase in votes here, this is 2023. Take a look at this. 2023, the year before Clark came in, Asia Wilson was the leading vote getter, 95,860, right? 95,860. This year, which is higher than last year, and obviously last year things jumped quite a bit, but this was the press release I received today. Look at that. 1.3 million, 1.2 million for Napheesa. Just like I'm not a genius, but I can do some simple math there. What is that? More than 10x from before Clark came into the league, which is that effect that I've talked about, where Napheesa Collier has become a favorite, I think, of Indiana Fever fans because they've gotten to see her play ball and see how great she is. And those are the things that you hope to see continue. And you hope that the All-Star game can be a celebration. It felt like one last year. It was a nice moment in the middle of the season. It was the most watched WNBA event last year as well. So you have to factor that in also. Like it was a big deal. And now you've got it happening in Indianapolis, of course, in Clark's home turf on her home court. You would expect her to do whatever she can to be out there and participating. We shall see when she's back on the floor next. Appropriately enough, the Fever's next game comes against the Lynx in the Commissioner's Cup. They will play for that Commissioner's Cup. It doesn't count toward the regular season record, but what it does do is there's a big prize pool of money up for grabs in the Commissioner's Cup. So there's some incentive there, because you have to remember the rest of the Fever aren't making the kind of dough that Caitlin Clark is making. It's like $500K on the line there. So that is a lot of money to get divvied up, and a chance to go head to head with Collier before they're captains. And then when they are captains, they choose back and forth. And of course, there are going to be a lot of members of the Fever on that team if the early voting returns say anything. So there will be a chance for Caitlin Clark to select Aaliyah Boston. The kind of drama we hope to see going forward in the remainder of the season, rather than dealing with everything that's happened so far and any possible injury. Speaking of the Fever, really quickly, just following up on something I've talked about, and that is, Caitlin Clark getting easier shots, not having to self-generate every shot. Now, part of that is her game. She's a very heliocentric player, the ball in her hand. She dominates the ball. LeBron, Luka, that kind of player. But at the same time, you also want to get her coming off pin downs. You also don't want her to have every three-point shot be contested or self-created. And if you look into the numbers, so many of Clark's baskets are unassisted. So how does that change? Well, one way it can change is playing her off the ball a little bit. And another way that can change is having someone who's a capable playmaker on the team, that being in the form of Aerie McDonald. Sue Bird on her Bird's Eye View podcast talked a little bit about that same thing, something that I've been harping on a bit.
I got to watch Caitlin play in person against Seattle. And one thing I noticed was it'd be really beneficial to her if she had players around her who could create shots for her, right? She has to create a lot of her own shots, but she's also creating for her teammates. And there are times where if she could just get some open looks off other people's play, it could be really beneficial to her. And that's where Aerie McDonald might have some impact.
I'm so excited to see Aerie McDonald and Clark share the floor now. You have size issues with Kelsey Mitchell. You have, the fact that they're both obviously guards who like the ball in their hands, that kind of thing. But Aerie looks like she can play in a variety of ways. Obviously, this gives you some options with Clark, and you can still go back to your bread and butter with Caitlin Clark at any time, of course. No one's saying to ever go away from that. That's not the point. The point is to mix up the diet a little bit, because if you do look into the numbers just a touch, the way that Caitlin Clark is not being assisted on baskets is, again, part of her. These are all the assists to her on the season. Part of that is the way she plays, and then part of that is that the Fever haven't had another playmaker really on the roster. So I think that is a good statement by Sue Bird, and one of the reasons like this McDonald pickup is so huge. Who would have thought, by the way, of all these free agency signings that the Indiana Fever made with it, Bonner, and I'm pretty much done revisiting the stuff with her, but they can play a lot faster without Tawana Bonner in the lineup. And obviously Natasha Howard played pretty well against the Wings, but Cunningham comes over in the trade. Colson and Turner haven't been much. McDonald feels like the biggest acquisition that the Fever have made. And we haven't even seen her on the floor with Caitlin Clark yet. That's the challenge for Stephanie White, is figuring out those dynamics. How do you work that with Kelsey Mitchell too? Because if you put Kelsey and Aerie out there, you're small, but they're two of your best players and they make you potent. The way you can run the floor, the way they can score, the way that they're different too, because Kelsey's just a different sort of player than Aerie and of course than Caitlin. And Kelsey's been cooking as of late. So those are good problems though. They're better problems than putting players on the floor who aren't capable of making things happen. And hopefully, we're at the tide turning here in a positive direction for the Fever going forward. And the All-Star weekend can indeed be a celebration for what the WNBA has become in this Caitlin Clark era, and for the Indiana Fever and Clark herself. Please hit like and subscribe to the channel, of course, if you enjoy what you see.